to make sense of it as just being part of Christ's suffering.
I was where it felt like I could jump up and touch him.
God had an idea or a plan for me, and then it's like he said, okay, I've given you these gifts, I've given you these talents, do something with them.
Jonathan Roumie, beloved for his role as Jesus in the global hit The Chosen, has just broken his silence. And what he's revealing about Hollywood is deeply unsettling. From spiritual warfare on set to industry pressure to hide his faith, Roumie is exposing the darker, unspoken side of showbiz that most actors are too afraid to mention. Jonathan Roumie, renowned for his portrayal of Jesus in The Chosen, has recently unveiled unsettling truths about Hollywood's underbelly. In a candid interview, he disclosed facing spiritual attacks during filming, including vivid nightmares and intense emotional turmoil. Roumie also revealed industry pressures to downplay his faith, with agents advising him to tone down the Jesus stuff to secure more roles. These revelations shed light on the often unseen spiritual and moral challenges within the entertainment industry. Roumie's courage in speaking out invites us to question what is the true cost of faith in Hollywood.
Through all of this, if it's not going to amount to something, And essentially, when I was at my lowest, it was 3 months after that moment where The Chosen came into my life.
Playing Jesus isn't just another acting job. It's a spiritual responsibility. And for Jonathan Roumie, that weight became very real. When he first took on the role in The Chosen, Roumie felt honored, but also overwhelmed. In interviews, he's admitted that the emotional and spiritual burden of portraying Christ began to seep into his personal life. He experienced what he called spiritual warfare, intense dreams, anxiety, and moments of deep discouragement during filming. But it wasn't just internal battles. As The Chosen gained global attention, Roumie became a spiritual symbol for millions of fans. People didn't just admire his performance, they looked to him as a figure of real faith. That pressure, immense. Yet Roumie leaned into it. He started attending daily mass, praying constantly on set, and treating the role with sacred reverence. "I can't play Jesus unless I stay connected to him," he once said. The question lingers. When an actor becomes the face of faith, where does the performance end and the person begin? Behind the glitz of Hollywood lies a quiet pressure that few speak about, and Jonathan Roumie felt it firsthand.
In a dream, and I felt God's love. It was so powerful, but I knew he wasn't close enough. And I said, "You're not close enough to me." And my concern is the world won't see Jesus.
We have to remember as actors not to judge the characters we play. Now, there's a difference between not judging a character and realizing the character.
After gaining recognition as Jesus in The Chosen, Roumie began receiving more attention from agents and producers. But instead of celebration, he was met with caution. He was told more than once to tone down the Jesus stuff if he wanted a broader career. Let that sink in. The man playing Jesus was asked to hide his faith to succeed. Hollywood didn't reject him outright, but it made the cost of authenticity clear. Roumie realized that open expressions of faith weren't just discouraged, they were a liability. The very industry that applauded diversity was uncomfortable with his devotion. In a podcast interview, Roumie reflected on this tension.
Well, I kind of knew, I thought I knew why and what was going on, but no fever.
The creators of the project have in mind for you to do if there's anything that you feel is compromising.
He shared that agents advised him to pursue more neutral, safer roles, ones that wouldn't brand him as a faith actor. But Roumie refused to separate his craft from his convictions. It raises the deeper question: is Hollywood truly inclusive, or only when it fits the narrative? And how many actors are silently conforming, afraid to speak up about what they really believe? Jonathan Roumie chose truth, but many never get that far. What happens when you play the most divine figure in history and it begins to affect your soul? Jonathan Roumie has spoken openly about the unseen battle he faced while filming The Chosen. It wasn't just pressure or long hours. It was spiritual warfare. Roumie described vivid nightmares, overwhelming anxiety, and moments of deep emotional exhaustion. There were days I couldn't explain what I was feeling, he shared. It felt like something was trying to crush me. And he wasn't alone. Several cast and crew members reported feeling similar emotional and spiritual unrest during key scenes, especially those depicting miracles or moments of betrayal. Some called it psychological strain. Roumie believed it was something darker. To protect himself, He leaned into his faith harder than ever. Daily mass, confession, spiritual direction, and constant prayer. He saw his role not just as an actor, but as a vessel for something greater. But the question remains, does telling sacred stories come at a sacred cost? For Roumie, the battle behind the scenes was just as intense as the one unfolding on camera, and it forever changed how he viewed Hollywood. Hollywood has seen its fair share of scandals, abuse, exploitation, power games. But Jonathan Roumie just exposed a different kind of darkness, one most people never hear about.
Saying the words that Jesus said to these people that are like looking at me and I'm there. I'm like, you know, and I told him like, this just feels wrong for the moment.
It's the silent, creeping rejection of faith. Roumie revealed that the real scandal isn't what makes headlines. It's what happens quietly behind closed doors. People of faith, he says, are often marginalized, misrepresented, or pushed out. They want your talent, he shared in a podcast, but not your truth. He recounted auditions where his convictions made producers uncomfortable. He spoke of projects that subtly mocked religion, and others that flat out rejected spiritual themes unless they were ironic or deconstructed. Even his role as Jesus sparked backlash in certain circles, with critics claiming it was too Christian or too sincere. This isn't about creative freedom. It's about a culture that sees faith as a threat. And yet, most actors stay silent. Why? Because speaking up means losing roles, respect, and representation. That's the real scandal on set. These weren't just feelings of unease. You could actually see them, shadows in the corners of his eyes.
Basically, that's kind of what the reaction was. It was like I think he's been able to make sense of it as just being part of Christ.
So Roumie asked the question that haunts every faith-based artist. Is there still room in Hollywood for belief? Or has reverence become rebellion in an industry built on illusion? So why did Jonathan Roumie decide to speak out, knowing full well what it could cost him? Because silence, he said, was no longer an option. Roumie shared in multiple interviews that he felt a deep spiritual nudge, a calling to use his platform not just for performance, but for purpose. God didn't give me this opportunity so I could stay quiet, he said. He gave it to me so I could be a light in the dark. That conviction led him to speak boldly at major faith events like the March for Life and Seek Conference. He became a leading voice on the Hallow app, guiding millions through prayer and meditation. And he used every interview not to promote himself, but to point people towards something higher. Hollywood may be uncomfortable with his faith, but millions of viewers find hope in it. Roumie knew the risks. He knew he might lose roles or relationships, but he also knew this. If faith costs you everything in a world of illusion, then maybe it's the only real thing worth holding on to. Jonathan Roumie's stand isn't just about one actor or one show. It's about a larger movement quietly unfolding in the entertainment world. More and more artists, writers, musicians, filmmakers are stepping into the spotlight with their faith unapologetically intact. The Chosen proved that spiritually rich storytelling doesn't have to be niche. It can be global. It can be beautiful.
I've had people say, like, you might want to downplay your faith a little bit because it's not really a thing that's going to win you over.
But then it comes down to reality. What are the jobs you're being offered? And if the job specifically you're being offered,
I'd never been to a march. I hadn't quite invested in that, the idea of like what it would mean politically.
of God's best for me to realize, like, I had to stop trying to control the industry, controlling my life.
It can break every rule and still succeed. Roumie's courage has sparked conversations that Hollywood's been avoiding for years.
What I think I needed to do, and check it with God, and that became the deciding factor. So, yeah, you just discern, pray, surrender, and but also, if you have the opportunity, try to find the arc where Jesus is with whatever characters that are flawed.
I'm surprised because that's kind of what I had heard about, and I just see how people react and how you look at the majority of the work that is put out in the secular world, and faith isn't
And whether the industry embraces it or not, audiences are hungry for truth, authenticity, and meaning. The question is no longer, can faith survive in Hollywood? Now it's, can Hollywood survive without it? Because if people like Jonathan Roumie continue to stand their ground, the future of storytelling may look very different and far more eternal than anyone ever expected. Jonathan Roumie didn't just play Jesus. He lived the cost of portraying him in a world that often rejects the sacred.
Country, there are movements of revival all over the place, and I think it's like these little pockets of fires are just, starting to light up, and I think it's only a matter of time before we're in a full-scale cultural revival, spiritually led, of course, by the Holy Spirit, and seeing essentially a repeat of what had happened 50 years ago.
From spiritual warfare to silent rejection, he faced a battle few see and even fewer talk about. But instead of hiding, he spoke out, not for fame, not for attention, but to defend something far more valuable, truth. His journey is a reminder that faith, when held firmly, can illuminate even the darkest corners of culture. And maybe, just maybe, his courage is the first crack in Hollywood's armor. The start of something real, something eternal, something worth believing in. If this story shook you, don't scroll past. Like, share, and subscribe to keep these powerful voices alive. Drop a comment. Do you think faith still belongs in Hollywood? Let's talk about it, fight for it, and shine a light where others won't. Because truth deserves to be heard.